All right, so gonna try a bit of a new format here, but I'm super excited to drop this video, and this is gonna be part one of a three-part series. It is the full guide to rewire your brain and become a limitless being. Man, just this information alone, it's been like 2+ years in the making that I've been gathering my experience, other sources, and I just want to say that I'm obviously not a neuroscientist. I don't have a degree in this, but if you look at my channel, you can tell that I am passionate about it. For the last pretty much like 8 or 9 years, I've been going through this transition. And really, when I got into self improvement, I learned a lot about the subconscious mind. I really started to attack my anxieties, attack my low self confidence, and I started to learn why I was stuck. I had these big visions, these big dreams, but I couldn't seem to break out of it. Something was holding me back. Something was getting in the way of me being truly limitless. Because that's what we are, that's what our natural state is, limitlessness. And along the way, throughout our lives, we picked up these bugs in our programming, these bugs in our operating system. We developed limiting beliefs. We developed disempowering thinking habits. And I'm going to take you through the entire process that I've been going through over the last multiple years that I've just recently compiled and that I'm just starting to see results from. I wanted to create one practical method. It's 3 steps in total. And I hope that it will help humanity. I hope it will help us free ourselves from the bullshit that we've been inundated with. I'm just going to preface this by saying it does take time. Would you rather suffer your whole life being a fraction of yourself at a fraction of your potential, or would you take the couple years, 3 years, 5 years, 8 years, commit to a lifelong journey of rewiring yourself, getting rid of the self created blockages that you have within yourself, and really freeing yourself to step into your full potential? It takes time to break your current mental patterns and install new ones, but don't give up. So, this is the rewiring process, and I actually was inspired by this from an author named T. Harv Eker. He wrote The Millionaire Mindset, I think it was called, or something like that. And I think he broke it down perfectly. The first step is awareness. Realize what is holding you back, because if you don't know what is limiting you, how are you going to fix it? Awareness is key. That's the first step. The second step is disassociation. So we got to cut the cord. And I'm going to talk about something called the blank slate. So recreating the blank slate of your mind, similar to how it was when you were born, when you were fresh out of the womb. Your mind was ripe to be wired. And it was wired, just wired without your consent. So I'm going to talk about methods how to create the blank slate. And then finally, you can reprogram yourself and install new programs, new beliefs, create an entirely new identity that you choose. Really, the possibilities are endless here. You can do anything with this. You can literally become anything. This process that I have compiled, it is super powerful. But first, we got to talk about what exactly is reality. What is this shit that we're living in? And the more I've been thinking about it, and I've said it in multiple videos, I am believing that this reality is it's some sort of mental simulation, okay? Our life is a mental projection. We are constantly getting a reflection of everything going on inside of our internal realm. That means that we can literally manipulate our lives by changing and altering our perception or altering our beliefs. When we change the way we look at something, it literally changes. Like, look at this graphic. Dude on one side says, "Oh, what a dull rainy day, the weather sucks." Girl on the other side says, "What's he talking about? It's beautiful." Two people can look at the same thing and interpret it differently, and that becomes true for each person. Like, look at the placebo effect. Tell me how someone can take a sugar pill and heal themselves. That means it's not the pill, it's what you're believing on the inside. The problem is, because our perception and our beliefs and our identity, it's all outdated, it's all disempowering, it's all a collection of the past, We are only projecting our past onto the present. We, as the observer of reality, essentially manipulate whatever we're looking at to fit our prior conditioning, our prior experiences, and our prior knowledge. That's how we make sense of it. But that's why we can't break through and create a new life. And I have their life is but a dream. You don't know how powerful that quote is. So, the dream world where we go to sleep, and if you're observant in a dream, you can tell that it shifts very fast. Like the scenes shift. Every time we have a new thought, we go right into that thought. The thing is, waking life is no different than the dream world. It's all a dream. Waking life is just happening at a slower pace. Our thoughts and our feelings still have an impact on reality. We get them, like they show up at some point, right? We get what we think about and what we believe, but there's a lag time. There's a built in lag time. So we don't notice that our thoughts are really the root of everything occurring in our reality. You know what? That's a damn good thing. So if we're saying dreams are higher dimensions, this is a lower dimension, to me, it seems like this dimension is almost like a school where we get to learn the consequences of our thoughts and actions and get to learn how powerful we really are without killing each other every time we have a negative thought, without getting into a plane crash. I hate to say this, but without getting into a plane crash every time we think about, oh, we're going to get into a plane crash. Because damn, if everyone's thoughts instantly became reality, man, we would have a shitty world. And people think it's chaos now. Oh man, we're lucky. And if you've ever lucid dreamt, that's waking up in the dream, becoming conscious in the dream, and then consciously controlling your thoughts. That's kind of what we're doing here. We're becoming conscious, consciously shifting and altering and rewiring ourselves in the dream of waking life, if that makes sense. We need to wake up and stop taking things so damn seriously and realize that we do have the power to transcend our suffering. We can control the dream by manipulating our internal world. So, before we get into the scientific stuff, I do want to touch on one other thing, and that is the inner battle. I have been observing this inner battle where I know what I want in life, I know what I want to do. Sometimes I make progress, but I can't really fully get there. And that's because two things are clashing within me, okay? You have the ego and you have the higher self. Don't get me wrong. Everyone kind of shits on the ego. If we didn't have an ego, we couldn't live in physical reality. We would go crazy. We wouldn't have an identity. We wouldn't be able to relate to others. We probably wouldn't be able to evolve as well. The problem is the ego is really built around safety. It's this shell of our personality. It's this shell of our authentic self. And yes, safety is important sometimes, but in today's day and age, it's more likely that our fears and our worries are artificial. We're not really in life or death scenarios. And so if we don't transcend the ego and tap into our higher self, the true limitless form of ourselves that is really abundant, that is grateful, that is present, that learns from suffering and attacks failure head on, we're going to continue to be the victim. You know, those people that are like, oh, life is against me, everyone's against me, and they are hardwired for negativity. They can't risk looking stupid in front of people because they got to uphold this ego. It's always blaming someone else. In that chart down there, one that just caught my eye is the world is a crazy place on the ego side versus the universe is friendly on the higher self side. There's not a term that I hear more than the world is a crazy place today. Oh, it's crazy out there. You got to realize that you can change how you view the world and it will change for you. But anyway, let's move on. So the first section, becoming aware. First, we got to talk about neuroplasticity. And this is huge. So there's tons of neurons in our brain, and these neurons connect. The connection between those is called a synapse. And as we learn and as we're conditioned and as we pick up programming, these neuron webs or these synapse webs become tighter. They become hardwired, and things just become automatic. When we were fresh out of the womb, the amount of synaptic connections that were happening was insane. It was like 700,000 to a million synaptic connections per second that were forming. And then we grow up and then we become an adult. The important thing is, though, there is no point in our life where we are not neuroplastic, which means there's no point in our life where we're not able to change and change our patterns and change our habits, change our identity. We can do this at any age. I hate when I hear people say, oh, I'm too old. I can't learn anything new. And that's why people start breaking down earlier. That's why they age themselves, because they think they're getting old, so their body has to break down, their mind has to break down. Not freaking true. So the goal as an adult when it comes to the rewiring process is to increase neurogenesis, or the production and connection of neurons. A cheat code to this, I'm gonna give you a secret. If you're into fasting, you already know it. BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It has been studied to increase neuroplasticity. I believe if you fast for more than 24 hours, BDNF shoots through the roof, and I can always feel it every time I fast. My brain feels like superpowered. My body even feels like it's healed. That is one way to increase neurogenesis. Obviously, if you eat well, if you're healthy, if you are eager to learn, and you believe you can learn new things, then you're going to be more neuroplastic. And then when we get to the blank slate part where we wipe it all clean, we're going to cut those disempowering connections, and then we're going to form new connections and alter our programming. So moving on, how we've been programmed. So from ages like 1 to 7, we were a sponge. We were soaking in everything from our environment. And this is why how you were raised, I hate to say it, but it kind of dictates your life. Unless you take control of it, which we're doing right now. So programming happened in 3 ways. Verbal programming. What did you hear as a child? Were your parents always speaking negatively? Did they have a negative outlook on life? Were they yelling at you? Or were they empowering you, uplifting you? Were they always blaming you, always tearing you down? This has a huge impact. Modeling. What did you see as a child? Were your parents doing drugs? Were they unhealthy? You subconsciously model that. And specific incidents. When we get into trauma, what kind of stuff did you experience as a child? These things all happened so long ago that we're not even aware that they are controlling our life at this point. When we talk about transformation, we have to get to the root of the problem, and the root is the subconscious mind. The real reprogramming happens in the subconscious. So this is why people go on diets and they go crazy and then they just crash out. They consciously are making the change, but their subconscious hasn't caught up. They haven't rewired their beliefs about health, about their self-worth. They haven't gotten over their maybe addiction to junk food. They really haven't broken those hardwired habits and their beliefs surrounding health. So the tip of the iceberg is the conscious mind. Once we get into the subconscious and we're going to do techniques to really get into that, then we'll be much more aware of what is actually going on in our subconscious. And we're going to start our self-transformation process at the root. But it's very important to know that our subconscious mind is constantly being molded by every bit of information that we consume, each interaction that we have with someone else, and even the thoughts that our conscious mind generates. It all seeps down into the subconscious and it alters our identity. I was reading a book called The Master Key to Wealth or something like that by Napoleon Hill. And he's talking about, if you've ever heard of autosuggestion, the process of constantly, over and over again, getting very clear on the intention that you want to manifest, repeating that over time with emotion behind it, consciously shifting your focus towards your intention. Eventually, your deeply rooted identity will shift. You'll start to see opportunities in real life that line up with your intention, because everything that's going on at a subconscious level is being projected back to us, right? But we can't just get rid of the conscious mind altogether. We do have to balance logic and intuition, willpower and just being, planning for the future and being spontaneous. I think a balance of those, just like if we balance the left and right hemispheres of the brain, will lead to the most effortless transformation. All right, so I dubbed these the Four Saboteurs. And these are the 4 things, the 4 bugs in our system that we need to overcome to really become limitless. These are the four things that are hardwired into us that are keeping us from really stepping into our potential. So, talk about trauma first. I'm glad that there's becoming a lot more awareness around trauma because humanity as a collective is affected by generational trauma. Obviously, the trauma that happened in our childhood. We had an experience that produced such a strong emotional reaction that now our subconscious runs from anything related to that. So basically, an experience that happened how many years ago is keeping you trapped, is keeping you in a mental prison right now. And when I realized that, I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. Why does it have to do that? And that was the first step for me to process my trauma and overcome it. I will say, when I moved from my hometown, my home state, and I moved completely across the country, for some reason I could step back and really analyze my childhood and those traumatic experiences because I removed myself from the environment where they happened. I could process them a lot better. So that's just what worked for me. But you can see how trauma does rewire the brain. Trauma may be the reason that you keep getting sick all the time. You can see there that the hippocampus shrinks, impairing memory. So it affects how your mind works. And I do suggest that you probably see a professional. It is possible to heal your trauma on your own. It does take a lot of self awareness, takes a lot of self study, and really just observing yourself objectively. You do have to experience those to an extent, and then you really have to let them go. Speaking of letting go, a book that really helped me deal with my trauma was Letting Go by Dr. David Hawkins, so check that one out too. Inner child wounds goes along with trauma. Although we are still adults, there is still a fraction of us that is that child, that is that hurt child, and that's why it's so important to heal ourselves. And at one point or another, if you know you struggle with this, you can probably look back in your life, in your childhood, so far back, and I guarantee you, you can probably pinpoint one experience, even if the interaction was so small, that created this wound and you never addressed it. The guilt wound, like you're afraid to set boundaries. You always feel sorry or bad. Maybe you were abandoned at some point in life, and that keeps being reflected back to you. Maybe you were neglected. Maybe you got trust issues. Until we acknowledge as part of ourselves and take steps to heal this part of ourselves, then we're going to keep replaying it in different scenarios that are really the same underlying thing. Take a look at what triggers you. What makes you feel annoyed? When do you get scared? When do you get insecure? Just observing those will tell you a lot about your trauma and make it that much easier for you to let them go. So, moving on, before we get to the next saboteur, I just want to talk about this. And I love this quote. If you are depressed, you are living in the past. If you are anxious, you are living in the future. And if you are at peace, you are living in the present. I used to get eaten alive by the fear of the unknown. I used to worry so much about the future. I would overthink all these scenarios and I would imagine the worst case scenario. And then I would get into the actual event or whatever I was stressed about, and I'll be like, what was I worrying about? That was the root of my anxiety. And if you are dwelling on the past, you are most likely going to be depressed. Dwelling on what happened, just replaying a conversation that you had in your mind over and over again and being like, why did I say that? Why did I do that? When we are not present, we are liable to bring the suffering of the past and the future into the present. But if we're fully in the now, those things really can't exist. If you are in the flow state, there's no room for anxiety. There's no room to be ruminating on the past. And that's where you're fully limitless. So when we're getting into fear, or I'm going to say anxiety, I'll say that you can use them pretty much interchangeably. I will say it is super hard not to be fearful when we are fed fear driven material, whether it be the news on TV, whether it be freaking newspapers, the front page of the newspaper. I was at my grandpa's house like last month, and the front page was like, oh, someone got hit by a car and whatever. That's the front page. That's the first thing you see. Immediately, it triggers a response in your body. Even if you are not there at the event, even if I'm just watching flooding happen or a natural disaster happen on Facebook, my body doesn't know the difference. It doesn't know that I'm not actually there. I could be a million miles apart from that. but my body is going to start to create the hormones. It's going to start to tense up. It's going to start to get in fight or flight mode, even if I'm just creating those images in my head. That's how powerful we are. And so a lot of us are living in chronic stress, in chronic fear. We are wasting our energy worrying about so much shit that doesn't have to be worried about. Everyday stress, like being in traffic. Where am I going to eat tonight? Oh, if things don't go exactly like I planned, what's going to happen? They don't have to be worried about. I did myself such a huge favor when I surrendered all that. And I trusted, I had faith that everything would work itself out. Whether you want to call it God, the universe, yourself, nature, whatever, will provide for you. Only if you trust in that. But if we are in that fight or flight response all the time, this response is only meant for real emergencies. If we are running away from someone that is trying to stab us, the sympathetic nervous system turns on, and that's great. We should be pumping cortisol. We should be pumping adrenaline, the stress response, to get us to act. But we're sitting there on the couch worrying about something that's going to happen in the future, and our breathing gets shallow. Our muscles get tense. Really, we can never chill out. We can never fully relax. We could go on the most grand vacation and we're still living in chronic stress. We're not really going to recover. When we are relaxed, that is the most true, raw, authentic, limitless version of ourselves. But we have to learn how to control our nervous system, to switch on the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest, so that we can actually sleep at night, so we can actually heal our body, we can actually digest, we can slow our breathing down. When we take control of our internal, our external changes, and starting with your nervous system is the key. Then you got fearing to fail, being scared to fail, trying to uphold an image of perfection, running away from situations that can make you feel insecure. I work with a lot of athletes, and a lot of them eat themselves alive when they mess up. But I get it, I've been there before, and I always tell them, I want you to fail. Because if we're not going to fail, we're going to stay stuck in our comfort zone. And if we have these goals that we want to achieve, we're not going to bridge the gap. Because where we are right now is not those goals, right? Getting uncomfortable and getting into new things, that will reduce a lot of your fear and anxiety, attacking your fears. Being okay with not being so damn secure all the time. Take a risk. When we embrace being insecure, we actually end up feeling more secure. And really, for me, when I learned about the spotlight effect, that changed everything. I realized that no one was really watching me and analyzing me like I was myself. When I mess up, no one's really thinking about it. They'll forget it in like 5 minutes, even if they do see it. Everyone's in their own bubble. Everyone's focused on their flaws, their mistakes, their failures. And that really just freed me to do what I actually wanted to do. That freed me to get on here and start making videos. Because I stopped caring about what other people thought. When we constantly seek external forces of security, like material possessions, status, or the approval of others, we tie our well-being to factors outside of ourselves that we have no control over. If we are attached to things that we can't control, we're going to be disappointed. We're going to always feel out of control. But if we embrace feeling insecure, we are cool with the ebbs and flows of life, we can handle anything life throws at us, that's when we will become more secure. When I developed the confidence in myself that I could get thrown into any situation, even if I wasn't prepared, and I could thrive in it, that's when my insecurity stopped. So start to take inventory of the fears or anxieties that you have essentially artificially created. Or maybe you understand why they're there, but you have no need for them. Analyze the fears that you have surrounding a goal. Think about, are these fears a life or death situation? Because that's what's subconsciously underlying all of our anxieties, is the fear of death. That's why the fight or flight response kicks on, is so we can survive and not die and reproduce. Start to examine when these fears and anxieties come up and don't try to fight with them. Just understand why they're happening and let them go. Don't fight it with more energy. That'll just make them stronger. Just release them. Moving on, depression. And some people might say, oh, depression is a chemical imbalance in the brain. That's why I'm depressed. Basically saying that you have no control over your depression, that it wasn't your fault at all, right? Well, I just read a scientific study that said those things aren't correlated. Yes, maybe the depression led to a chemical imbalance in the brain, but it was not the cause of it, okay? Most of the time that I've seen and that I've experienced within myself is that first it's anxiety, which causes a lack of action, which it causes stagnancy, no evolution, and that leads to depression, not having a purpose. If your actions and your desires are not aligned with each other, right? The inner battle. If you have no excitement for the future, you have no goals to shoot for, that's when I find myself getting depressed. Things feel hopeless. If your health is trash, if your dopamine is hijacked, this one's huge. If you're doing drugs and alcohol, or you're indulging in short term forms of pleasure, of dopamine, then real life ain't gonna give you any pleasure. It's going to feel dull, it's going to feel gray. You're not gonna get any dopamine from accomplishing things and pushing yourself. And that's when I find I get the biggest high in life, better than any drug or alcohol could ever give me. If you are stuck in a victim mentality, if you think life is against you, you have no control, if you're comparing yourself to others, always putting others on a pedestal, remember the spotlight effect. They're probably insecure too. They probably have their own issues. Everyone has their own issues, no matter how much money they have, no matter how great they look. Just stop it. Get off Instagram. Just realize it's all fake. Just stop it. Depression is a cycle, there is a cause. And I hate that we just medicate people that are depressed. I hate it. I think there's a root to everything. And there's a trigger that can make you go down the rabbit hole of depression, the cycle of depression. One day you got to get up and break the cycle of depression. Realize why it's happening and create momentum in the positive direction. Just start anywhere. And finally, the last one, self-limiting beliefs. Remember that what you believe about yourself and about the world is what you become, is what you experience. And again, your beliefs are subconscious programs that shape your identity, which translate to how you show up in the world, which translates to what you think you deserve in the world, which then ultimately dictates your potential. Your potential is contained by your beliefs. What are you thinking about yourself? I remember when I was a freshman year of college and I had this one friend. He would always, when we went to the dining hall, he would always have huge plates of vegetables, natural foods. And I was sitting there eating chicken tenders and fries. But I was also wondering why I was overweight and depressed and unhappy and whatever. One day we were sitting there, we were having a conversation, and what he said stuck with me forever. He said, "Why can't you eat healthy?" And at first, my ego kind of resisted that. Blah, 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 excuses, whatever. Then it really hit. Why can't I? Why can't I just do it? And from there, I went on a huge health transformation. I lost a lot of weight. I healed my body, yada, yada, yada. But really, when we're talking about limiting beliefs, it's as simple as that. Why can't you just choose to believe something else? The problem is that we got years and years, synapses, connections that are holding us back. And we try to protect that, right? Human nature, sometimes we don't like change. Change is hard. When our beliefs are challenged, we want to reject them. And many of us are carrying unconscious shame, a belief deep down that you're not good enough, that maybe something is wrong with you, that you're not worthy. If we feel deep down that we are broken, that we need to fix ourselves, we will self-sabotage any goals that we set. We'll block any opportunities that would lead to us fulfilling our potential. And when we fail, we will confirm this belief. We'll say, "See, I knew I wasn't good enough. See, I knew I couldn't do it." The truth that we have subconsciously agreed to is that we are not worthy enough or that we're not capable. The thing is, though, beliefs are not absolute truths. Beliefs are only true to us. So right there again, one person thinks it's so hot, the other person is loving it, right? In reality, we can choose to believe anything that we want. But we do have to know that it does take time to mold our beliefs. We can't just snap overnight. We got to break those old connections and build new ones. But it is possible. Like, why would you just sit there and let something limiting you, a limiting thought, dictate your whole life? Ask yourself, is my belief actually true, or is it simply based on my perception? What if I said, I'm not good at speaking any language besides English, and that held me back from learning another language? Instead, I could say, I've never put serious effort into Spanish. I can learn it if I want to. Right there, that's a growth mindset. That's self empowerment. That's freeing yourself from the artificial limitations that you have created. And I will say, you can't just use positive affirmations. I am not a fan of affirmations because if you don't get deep into your subconscious and change that belief, you can repeat all the affirmations you want, but it won't stick. If you have low self confidence, you can't just stand in the mirror and say, I'm confident, and expect things to change. You're going to really just reconfirm that you're not confident. You need to prove your worthiness, your capabilities to the deepest parts of yourself, which will then program your subconscious. By just throwing yourself into the fire, you can smash limiting beliefs. Like, let's say you're afraid to speak in public. Just go out, talk to the cashier, make small talk, start doing something that you wouldn't normally do. It will shift you to a new timeline. And once you believe that you can do anything, the possibilities are truly endless. Start paying attention to your inner dialogue. How are you talking to yourself? Again, pay attention to the situations or events that trigger you. If you have a strong emotional reaction to something, that can give you clues about underlying negative beliefs that you have. So, this was part one. Part two, we're going to get into the blank slate. So, we've become aware. Now, we're going to wipe our brain clean. We're going to return back to our childlike state or as close as we can possibly get. We're going to increase neuroplasticity and we're going to create an inner world that is ripe for reprogramming. We're going to cut those old patterns. So I'm going to do one per week, 3 parts. Let me know what you think. Let me know if this is helping so far. Peace.